June 6, 1944, 6:29 a.m., Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. The ramp drops. Within seconds, the first row of American soldiers is cut down. Machine gun fire rips through the morning air. Bullets snap across water. Men fall forward into the surf before they can even raise their rifles. The tide carries bodies sideways. Some drown under the weight of 80-pound packs. This is not the cinematic D-Day. This is chaos. This is Omaha. Unlike Utah Beach, where currents accidentally placed troops in a weaker sector, Omaha is exactly where German defenses are strongest. The bluffs overlooking the beach are fortified with concrete bunkers, interlocking machine gun fields of fire, artillery positions, and mines. German soldiers from the experienced 352nd Infantry Division are ready. The American plan had assumed heavy naval bombardment would cripple these defenses before the first wave arrived. It didn't. Bombers had dropped their payloads too far inland to avoid hitting landing craft. Naval shells missed many hardened bunkers. As landing craft approached the shore, German positions remain largely intact. Inside those landing craft, young men from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions wait in silence. Many are seasick. Many are terrified. Some grip letters in their pockets. Some whisper prayers. Then the steel ramp crashes down. Machine guns open up immediately. Company A of the 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Division, is nearly wiped out within minutes. Of 200 men in one company, fewer than 30 remain combat effective after the first assault. The water turns red in patches. Men try to take cover behind steel obstacles planted in the sand, Belgian gates, and wooden stakes tipped with mines.
But the tide is rising, and cover is almost non-existent. Radio operators are killed before transmitting reports. Officers fall. Units land off target. Entire formations dissolve into scattered groups of survivors hugging the shingle embankment at the top of the beach. By 7:30 a.m., the situation looks catastrophic. Some commanders offshore consider pulling back. Reports describe complete devastation. Casualties are mounting rapidly. German fire remains relentless. This is the closest D-Day comes to failure. And yet, something changes. There is no single heroic speech, no dramatic turning point, just small decisions, individual acts. A lieutenant gathers whoever is left near him and crawls toward a gap in the barbed wire. Engineers blow a narrow path through obstacles under direct fire. A destroyer captain risks grounding his ship by sailing dangerously close to shore to fire point-blank into German bunkers. The USS Frankfurt and USS McCook, close to within 1,000 yards, practically suicidal range, to silence machine gun nests that have pinned down hundreds of soldiers. Meanwhile, small groups of infantry begin climbing the bluffs, not in formation, not as planned, just men moving uphill because staying on the beach means certain death. They scale steep, muddy slopes using rifle slings and bare hands. German defenders, expecting organized assaults, are caught off guard by scattered attackers emerging from unexpected angles. By late morning, isolated American squads reach the top of the cliffs. They move from bunker to bunker, clearing them with grenades and close-quarters fighting. Every yard gained costs lives. On the beach below, medics work non-stop.
Chaplains move among the wounded. Some soldiers lie exposed for hours before they can be dragged to cover. The tide continues rising, submerging obstacles and bodies alike. By noon, what had begun as slaughter begins to resemble a fragile foothold. But the cost is staggering. Approximately 2,000 American casualties occur at Omaha Beach on D-Day alone, killed, wounded, or missing. Entire platoons cease to exist. And yet, the beach is not abandoned. It is held. The real story of Omaha Beach is not flawless strategy. It is not perfect coordination. It is survival under impossible pressure. If those first waves had broken, if fear had overtaken discipline, the entire Normandy invasion might have unraveled. German forces could have concentrated against the remaining beaches. The Allied foothold in France might have collapsed before it began. Instead, exhausted, scattered soldiers, many without officers, made the decision to move forward, because staying still meant death. By evening on June 6th, American forces have pushed several hundred yards inland. Not miles, not triumphantly, but enough. Enough to survive the night. Enough to allow reinforcements to land. Enough to prevent disaster. Omaha Beach becomes known later as Bloody Omaha. But for those who were there, it was not a legend. It was confusion. It was noise. It was sand mixed with smoke and fear. And it was the thin line between invasion and failure. By early afternoon on June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach is no longer a killing zone. But it is not secure either.
Small American units have reached the top of the bluffs, but they are scattered, disorganized, low on ammunition, and cut off from clear communication with higher command. No large coordinated breakthrough exists. What exists are pockets of men fighting independently. And that independence is what saves the invasion. German defenders expected waves to collapse. They expected the beach to be cleared with concentrated fire. What they did not expect were isolated squads appearing behind bunkers, attacking from angles the defensive plan never accounted for. At strongpoint WN-62, one of the deadliest defensive positions overlooking Omaha, American soldiers approach from the rear. The German machine gun crews who had inflicted devastating casualties are suddenly exposed. Close quarters fighting follows. Grenades, rifle fire, silence. One bunker at a time, the defensive network begins to fracture. But this success is not happening everywhere at once. In many sectors, fighting continues all day. Snipers fire from rubble. Mortars drop into gathering points. Medical evacuation remains chaotic. The beach itself is still under intermittent artillery fire. Offshore, commanders debate the situation carefully. There is no dramatic order to withdraw, but there is serious concern. Reports remain incomplete. Casualty numbers are unclear. Landing schedules are behind. Yet reinforcements continue landing. That decision, to continue sending men into chaos rather than pull back, becomes one of the most consequential of the entire war. By late afternoon, American troops push several hundred yards inland in multiple sectors. German resistance stiffens in some areas, but begins collapsing in others. Communications inside German lines are disrupted. Counterattack coordination falters. One major reason? German High Command confusion. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is not present at the front that morning. He had returned to Germany for his wife's birthday and to request additional armored divisions. Adolf Hitler remains asleep when the invasion begins. Panzer divisions require his direct authorization to move. Hours are lost. Those hours matter. Had armored reserves moved immediately at dawn, Omaha's fragile foothold could have been crushed before it stabilized. Instead, by the time significant counterattacks are organized, American forces are already inland. Night falls on June 6th. The beach that began as slaughter is now an exhausted defensive line. Troops dig shallow foxholes in unfamiliar soil. Many units are still intermingled. Officers are still locating fragments of companies. Casualty clearing stations overflow. The wounded are ferried back to ships under darkness.
Approximately 2,000 to 2,400 American casualties occurred at Omaha on D-Day. Of those, roughly 1,000 were killed. German losses were significant but lower, estimated between 1,200 and 1,500 across the broader sector. But numbers alone do not capture what Omaha represented. It was the one beach where failure felt possible. Utah Beach succeeded with relatively light casualties. British and Canadian forces made steady progress at Gold, Juno, and Sword. But Omaha tested the entire invasion. Had it failed, the American landing zone would have split in two. Allied supply lines could have been disrupted. German forces might have concentrated against weaker flanks. Instead, by June 7th, the beachhead is expanding. Within days, the port of Cherbourg becomes the next objective. Within weeks, Allied forces break out of Normandy. Within months, Paris is liberated. And within 11 months, Berlin falls. All of that traces back to a handful of chaotic hours on a narrow stretch of sand. But here is the deeper truth about Omaha Beach, the one rarely emphasized. It was not won by perfect execution. It was saved by decentralization. When plans failed, junior officers and enlisted men made independent decisions. Sergeants led charges. Engineers improvised demolitions. Naval captains ignored cautious distance and closed fire support to near-suicidal proximity. The invasion succeeded not because everything worked. It succeeded because enough people refused to stop. There was no single hero who saved Omaha. There were hundreds. Men who crawled forward when staying down meant survival. Men who climbed cliffs knowing machine guns were waiting. Men who landed in the second and third waves knowing exactly what had happened to the first. That is the real story of Omaha Beach. Not cinematic perfection, not a flawless operation, but survival in the face of near collapse. And from that fragile foothold came the liberation of Western Europe. History often looks inevitable in hindsight. On Omaha Beach, nothing felt inevitable. It felt uncertain. It felt terrifying. And it very nearly failed. If you want to understand how thin the line between victory and disaster can be, stay with this channel. Because history is not written in certainty. It is written in moments where everything could have gone the other way.